Hey
Yes.
everybody, welcome to the first episode in this series that is currently unnamed, but is basically the unofficial inspiring people to be in tech and to do cool shit in tech.
Yeah.
And I have Haley with me here as our first guest. And so I actually first discovered Haley on Instagram, as all good relationships start. Uh, and Haley is currently a product manager at Digimarc. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You sure did.
Awesome. And I am kind of going to walk you through just why I have invited Haley onto the episode today, and then I'm going to let Haley do some talking. But being somebody who's been a career switcher myself from Starbucks baristaing to getting into tech and then moving within tech to all these different roles, software development, network engineering, sales. It's not often that I see somebody, oh, sorry. Got something in my eye? Okay. It's not often that I see somebody who I have seen pivot so dramatically in the ways that I feel like I have, and it's hard to do. And so
Yeah.
Haley is going to give us some nuggets of wisdom. And Haley, just to set you up, I see that you started out, you were comp sci grad, right?
Correct.
Comp sci grad, and you spent a year working as a software developer for your prior company before moving into being a data analyst and then a product manager and continuing to work your way up the ranks. So I was wondering if you could start by, in your own words, saying what got you into computer science and software development and what things kind of happened in your life that made you think, oh, it's time to pivot to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love telling the story about how I found computer science because I was not a technically inclined gal. I had like one family computer growing up. I wasn't allowed to have a MySpace. I know a lot of people
Oh
dabbled in
no!
HTML with MySpace, right? So that it was never on my radar. I actually went to school to study math, and I was a math girl, math nerd through and through, and that was what I thought was going to be my thing for life. And I was stuck in a programming fundamentals class as an elective for my math degree, and
Oh,
had
okay.
a professor who was just such a great teacher. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but I ended up just loving the concepts. And mind you, my first class, I went home and cried because I was like, I don't fit in. I don't know anything
Oh,
about tech. I don't know about video games. I don't know about, and now
yes.
I play video games. I've gone to the dark side. But
Right.
like at that
Yep.
time, I was not even close to immersed in that world, but I kept showing up, right? I was like, this isn't going to get me. All these other things beforehand have not gotten me. This class is not going to get me, right? So I kept showing up, kept going, and I was like, hey, I'm kind of starting to like this computer science thing, right? Getting all the assignments done. And towards the end of the semester, my professor actually pulled me aside and said, hey, like, you're really good at this. Like, do you know that you could have a career
Okay.
out of this? And I was like, oh, like truly, I didn't know that very well because I was streamlined focused on this one thing, which is always, it always ends up changing, right? When you think you're locked in on one
Yep.
thing, it's always going to change. But it just kind of validated me a little bit to think like, yeah, I am actually good at this. And this person who's director of app development at his company and also teaches computer science, like he thinks I can do this. So I now think I can do this, right? So I changed my degree, pivoted into computer science, and it was all frolicking off into the sunset from there. And I just
Wow, it's not
genuinely
that
loved
magical.
it. Well, I'm sugarcoating it.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was brutal. It's a hard degree, but
Yeah.
no, but it was great. I really did love it. I loved my time. I love learning. I love studying. I love note taking and being that student of anything.
I
So
can relate.
it was a great time. Yes, yes. I'm like, someone give me an excuse to be a student of something again because I love it.
I like the excuse to buy new colorful pens and make like absurdly pretty notes of something that I could have like notarized, in like 5 seconds and it took me
Yes.
5 minutes.
Yes, all of my margins have flowers in them. That's my go-to
Yes.
doodle. But
Yes.
anyway, yeah, so that's how I got into computer science. I wasn't the coding since I was 10 type person. I wasn't even
Mm.
a played on my computer type person. So I kind of
Mhm.
stumbled upon it. And I feel like that's kind of been the story of my career, if you will. Like I am doing a thing and I'm convinced myself this is it for life, right? This is the thing that I'm good at. I add value here. I'm unique because of these traits, and I'm going to do great in this. And then I start to take a peek into a new world, and I'm like, ooh, I'm nosy. And I always joke about that. I'm nosy. I want to know more. I'm curious. This is great. This view of delivering quality software to solve some business need is amazing. It's fantastic. It's exciting. But what's going on when it releases? Like, what's going on with the adoption? What's going on? What users are using this? Like, what types of users are liking this feature and aren't? And so that started to pique my interest, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to peek behind the curtain and get a little more context of why we were making the decisions we were making, why this user story was passed down to me as my next thing to work on. And so that's how I ended up stumbling, if you will, into data analytics. A job opened up internally in the company I was working at, and I was like, I'm gonna go for this, right? And quickly, because I think this is a good thing to share, a good nugget to share, I remember getting so upset that my leaders, my managers didn't come to me and say, hey, Haley, we have this data analyst job, do you want it? I was so upset. I was like, they know I love data, why didn't they come to me? And I talked to one of my senior developers who I just love. His name's Brian. He had a big impact on my career. And he said, Haley, you know that they probably just don't know that you want it, right? Like, you have to speak up and tell them what you want in order for them to give you that opportunity. And I was like, dang, you're right. So went and applied, and I pretty much got the job in the first interview. We didn't even go any further. We sat down in a room and they said, yep, you're good. So
okay, I know that you're only halfway through your story, but you hit on like two really cool nuggets that I don't want to skip over.
Please. Please.
The first being nosy, right? So I love how you call it being nosy, because I think the more corporate-y speak for that is what? Being growth mindset or something open-minded.
Continuous learning, which I also talk about. So I'm just as cringe as everyone else, but yes, I'm nosy. I want to know what's going on. So yes.
So just for some context, basically some of my LinkedIn followers asked for inspiring women in tech specifically, right? And I feel like a lot of times we undercredit some of the skills that we have either gathered through our experiences, or, who knows how much is innate. But I think being nosy is one of them, right? And so I love that you put being nosy in a positive sense, and how that's really helped you have a technical career. So that's just the one comment I wanted to make. The second thing, asking for what you want. So I think that's really, really important. I also struggle with this, because you think that people are just supposed to see what you're doing or remember when you've hinted at something. So could you just tell people, like, was it easy to overcome that? Was it as simple as this conversation and speaking up?
I think it depends a lot about the environment you're in. And so I have had a pretty positive environment for the most part the whole time in my career. And I acknowledge that that is a luxury to some extent, because some people work in a very toxic environment, a toxic workplace. And I understand that. So anyone that hears this advice can take it with a grain of salt. But I have always been very vocal with everyone that'll listen about where I want to go, because not only is it just the practical, if they know they can help me get where I want to go, but it also guides the type of feedback that they give me, because they recognize Haley isn't content with where she's at. She wants to get to that next level. So if I see her doing something, a behavior, a habit, a way of communicating that doesn't align with what she wants, I'm going to speak up, because I know that's where she wants to go. So there is that tactical piece of, the more people that know I want a promotion, it's more likely I'm going to get a promotion, right? It's that, right. But it's also more than that. It's also like the soft, touchy-feely growth stuff. Like, the more people can support you and help you get to where you want to. I know, yuck. Oh, I feel bad saying that, but no. So it's really important. And weirdly enough, I've never been super shy about that, but I recognize how hard it can be, especially if you're in a place where you feel like people don't care, won't listen. But I would say it anyway, because maybe someone that's not so outspoken and loud still can support you, even if it's not that like manager or that executive. There are other people who can support you on your growth journey. So
no, I think that's fantastic advice. Thank you. Okay, I will let you continue along your life journey. You were at having just the data analyst role.
No, I'm glad you're interrupting, because I'll just yap this whole 30 minutes and the poor viewers will have been like, wow, that was something. But so that's how I got my data analyst role. And I continue to learn more about the company, the trends, our users, our competitors, just lots of things that you can learn. And I was so lucky because it was a pretty small company. So I pretty much had access to everything. So I was just, if I wanted to know the answer to a question, I was running a SQL query, right? Like I could get in there and get what I wanted to get and end up finding some cool stuff. We were able to like recuperate back some money that we had lost based off some analysis I did. So it was some exciting stuff that I was able to uncover. And after doing that for a while, one of my coworkers, I forgot which one it was, but they came to me and said, "Hey, we think you would be good at this product manager position. What do you think about that?" And I immediately had to Google what is product manager. I don't know. I'm still pretty new to this industry. I don't know all this jargon yet. I'm barely keeping up with all the acronyms. Like, I don't know. And it seemed like another opportunity to step into that next level of, I get to be even more nosy, right? Like now I get to be in these strategic roadmap calls with directors and VPs and executives, and I get to understand like what are we going to be doing 3 years from now? You know, it's less about what's going on today and what could happen in a few months, but now it's like what's our big dream? What's the big North Star, if you will, that we're moving toward, right? And so that opportunity, again, I got lucky and someone saw something in me in a role I had never heard of and gave me that chance, and I didn't look back. I said, yes, opportunity to learn more, opportunity to know more, sign me up. So went for that, and I have only minorly looked back ever since. No, I'm just kidding. I love it. It's been great.
No, I love that curiosity has been the path that took you there, that like you wanted to understand and do things from the ground up is kind of how I interpret it. And like what a cool, curious way to approach tech and really business. And I had something else off of that, but the other thing I was going to say is to your point of somebody seeing something in you or just being exposed to something, right? So I'm currently working as a developer advocate, which a lot of people don't know what that is. I don't know if you know, but
I don't. I want to know. Okay, so if you don't mind, yeah.
So we're supposed to be like community-facing software developers. So we create technical resources to support the people who use our products. Could be sample code, could be tutorials. We give talks, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. But anyway, I had no idea that this role existed either. Yeah. And I am similar where like I really enjoyed problem solving. Programming came pretty naturally to me. But I'm always kind of thinking big picture and like I get maybe nosiness. I like want to know what's going on behind the scenes. I want to have a say in things. I want to have a voice. And developer advocacy was like this super cool gig that somebody I really respected had. And I saw the cool stuff he was doing and I was like, oh, well, I feel like I'm made for this job. Anyway, it's just funny how life takes you down those paths.
Yeah, and you don't know how your unique skills and what you bring to the table can be leveraged until you kind of open your mind up a little bit and get out of this phase of like, I'm a software engineer and that's what I'm gonna be. That's what I studied in school. That's who I am. It's in my lifeblood. That's it for me. And so opening up your perspective and also being more aware of yourself and knowing what you bring to the table will help you find that next thing that you can shine in, you know?
I think especially coming from school, like you talked about kind of having that tunnel vision plan, you know, I feel this might be changing, but I think that at least when I was in school, people didn't go to school and say, I want to be a product manager. You know, they basically said, I either want to be, I don't know, a software engineer or an IT. There was like 5 people in our MIS program, which was like basically technical management. So nobody knew that program. But anyway, there's actually a plethora of roles in tech that just utilize these unique combination of skills just depending on the title.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you can hone in on all of those skills that you have, like even just things like a system administrator, a database administrator, like there are all of these very niche roles that you can have to contribute to this ginormous system that makes these products run, right? So it is really cool. And it's something that's not talked about. I think that, you know, I've gotten a lot of outreach from kids in college who are thinking about applying for PM jobs right out of college. And I think that's amazing. I think it's really good to get your feet wet and get into the business side of things, because I am, with my technical background, I've got that knowledge of what is an API, what is a database, how do they interact with each other, those types of things, right? But then that business knowledge of all those acronyms and Tam, Sam, Som, looking at the market, all of these things that I had just never even scratched the surface on until I got into this job. Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the easier you can, or sorry, the earlier you can get into it, the better. So I'm happy to hear that it seems a bit more normalized now to graduate with a CS degree and look at what are my options, what's the best fit for me, rather than like straight to, I want to be a software engineer at Google, you know?
Yes. So it sounds like you really love being a product manager. Like maybe that's kind of where you sit, at least for a little while. Looking back, would you do it the same way? Would you go through all of these technical roles before going to product management? Or do you wish somebody, like some kind of magical tech fairy, had like tapped your shoulder when you were in college and been like, hey, you should be a product manager?
I don't think so, because I feel like I can bring a level of empathy to the table that maybe someone who jumped right into product management can't. And it can also get you in trouble, because I might think, oh, I wrote 5 lines of code 12 years ago.
No.
Like I know how we should build it. I'm just kidding, but I know how we should build this, right? And it's maybe not the best way given our system, given how things are architected, what our skill set of the team. So you can get yourself in trouble with that little bit of background knowledge, but I like being able to empathize with the people I'm working with. I've seen how difficult it can be to write software when you don't have the fully fleshed out requirements as well as they can be. I've seen how difficult it can be to try to scale up software when you don't have appropriate tests systems built out, like things like that. Like I've just seen it firsthand. And so I know why technical counterparts prioritize those kinds of things. And so I don't think I would change it. I really don't. I think it's given me like a unique perspective, so to speak. Although I think a lot of people have taken my career path. I don't think I'm the only one, but I do think it's given me a perspective that maybe some other people don't have.
Not necessarily the traditional path. Maybe if not uncommon, not extremely traditional.
The path less travel.
The fun, those detours and side quests. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so as I told you before this recording started, I took only about 50 notes on posts you've made and things that just kind of came to my head since you were talking. So talking about how, being a technical person gives you better empathy and a more well-rounded viewpoint for being a product manager. Some of the things that kind of came up related to that in your content that I think are kind of cool to talk about. First of all, a perfect set in stone roadmap is like Bigfoot, and I think your slide said something about how like it doesn't exist. I don't know. I'm paraphrasing here. So maybe you could speak a little bit to that, because I think that that's something that everyone in the business struggles with, from sales to the engineers to even developer advocates, right? People are asking us, what's this new feature going to be? Anyway, can you shed some light on how product roadmap comes to be and why it's
absolutely like yes, absolutely. And you did pretty good paraphrasing, so I'll give you 5 stars on that. But yeah, I had said that a perfect set in stone, like 2-year forward looking product roadmap is like Bigfoot. You may have heard of it, but it doesn't exist. And so obviously this was a little cheeky, but the point was that if I'm sitting here beginning of 2025 and I'm thinking about what the product is going to look like down to individual features and when I can have them in 2027, I'm doing myself a disservice, because so much is going to change in that 2 years before I get to that point. Whether it's a competitor comes in and corners this side of the market, and now maybe building that feature out isn't as important as I thought because there's this competitor doing it better. I'm just making that up, but maybe that happens. Or maybe there's this new industry regulation. There's some law that comes out that requires something to be built a certain way, and now that feature in 2027 becomes obsolete. Or maybe we could have done it a better way. Like, so many things are constantly evolving in the world of software development and what we're bringing to the market and what the users are looking for, the problems they're facing. And so again, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're sitting here now and getting down into the nitty gritty of this is exactly what you're going to have 2 years from now. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some direction. Like, you should know if you're going completely east or completely west, right? Like, I'm not talking, I have no idea what the world's going to look like 2 years from now. That's a big part of being a product manager, is having that strategic vision. Like, I'm responsible for what's here and now, what we're working on and what's going to come out, and maybe the next 1 or 2 releases, but also like high level, big picture, where are we going to be? Like, who do we want to be? What do we want to say we bring to the table? And so that was kind of my silly and jokey way of explaining that. And I remember someone that I used to work with left a really insightful comment, and it's a gray area. It's a spectrum, right? And so I'm saying this, knowing exactly what's going to be delivered down to the month in 2027 isn't realistic, but also for someone like a developer advocate who's responsible for the experience of people interacting with your software, or someone like marketing who wants to be able to plan a go-to-market strategy at least 3-4 months in advance. There is that middle ground of, you need to be able to tell people roughly, I'm going to have this thing on this day. But I always just approach it with caveats. Like, again, having that empathy. I know what can happen when you're trying to integrate with some third-party API and it's just not working, things like that. Like, they just come up. And so always caveating it with, the team is doing their best. The team is maybe slightly ahead of schedule. We have a little wiggle room, and just being communicative with everybody and finding that middle ground is really important.
So is that a little bit how you manage the uncertainty of it too? Because even though what you're saying makes logical sense, right? And like integration with a third-party API, like I get all that. But I'm sure that there's still, people like leaders, maybe salespeople who aren't behind the scenes in the engineering, whatever, who are like, but I need to know, or like, why? It needs to come out anyway. Is that the main way to help them handle the uncertainty, is to like never make flat out blanket promises?
I think that combined with, well, talking about uncertainty, have you ever heard of the cone of uncertainty?
No, please tell me about it.
Okay, so I'm going to do a terrible job explaining it. So whoever's listening to this, please go look it up afterward. But it's basically this concept that when you're starting a project, the uncertainty is really wide. Like you could be 2 times the projected release date, or you could be half the projected release date, because you really just don't know. But the more you like progress down this journey of getting closer to delivery, that uncertainty shrinks and you get closer and closer to like the true delivery date. And so knowing that concept, I think that us as product managers, we can kind of navigate that and follow that cone of uncertainty and continue to commit, continue to communicate as we progress, and become more straightforward with things like timelines as you get more certain. And so it's not like we're less than a month away from when we're supposed to release, and I'm telling people, I don't know, like at that point you should be pretty locked into what's coming. You're gonna have to do some kind of user acceptance testing. Like there's a ton of things that need to happen before that release, but just progressing as that uncertainty lowers, you can continue to kind of share that with everyone around you. And so we also at my company try to make our roadmap as transparent as possible. Like we've given pretty much everyone in our company access to our roadmap with the disclaimer that unless it's like in deconstruction, like unless it's being like broken down into actionable epics and stories with the developers right now, we're not committing to delivering this quarter or something like that, right? Like we have to give them that qualification, but they can see like we have now, next, and later, and they can see what we're looking at priority wise for each product. And I think that helps too, because it encourages conversation and questions and, hey, why is this here and not there? And so that's really helpful too, is just being communicative to a level where it serves you, right?
Transparent to the extent you can be, I guess. No, that cone of uncertainty was actually a perfect visual. I think that makes a ton of sense. And then also, it's hard to choose where I'm going to lead this, to be honest, but I've actually had somebody ask me this question, so I'm going to go with this next one. You've talked before on Instagram about how to lead without authority. There's lots of people who are responsible for kind of helping make change happen, yet they're not the boss, or maybe they sit in between teams. Do you have any advice for people who have that difficult role?
Yeah, it's really tough. A lot of people that talk about the product manager position say they're like the poster child of leading without authority, because you're expected to get all these people on board with this vision, right? But you're not higher than them in any kind of org chart. Like that's not how it works. And so I always try to lean into that empathy that I talked about earlier and try to establish that level of like trust and empathy with all teams. I think that it's typical for product managers to talk and focus a lot about collaborating with engineering because it is vital to the success of the product, but there's so many other teams that you have to work with too. And so being empathetic and building trust with marketing, with sales, with even legal. Like I was just talking to someone from our legal team recently, and I was asking a couple questions, and I said, hey, I will make sure that whatever decision we make, that you're looped in. And it's just taking small steps like that to make people trust you and know that they are along this journey with you, that you're not trying to come in and bark orders, because that is the worst way to try to come in and lead without authority. Right. And so I lean into trust. I lean into celebrating wins whenever it's appropriate. I'm probably viewed by some as nauseatingly positive, but I'm always going to celebrate a win. If an executive messages me and says, hey, the product is looking great, I'm going to screenshot that and share that with my team. I don't care.
And why not?
Like, I want them to know. Yeah, I want them to know.
Why not be like, when you get a win?
Real. Yeah, for real. And so it is challenging, but I would say let your work speak for itself, communicate to build that trust, try to understand. I ask a ton of questions of everyone. I ask for review on everything, not because I don't trust that my work is good, but I trust that other people have more knowledge to bring into the table. And so I never work in a vacuum. I just developed like a one-pager for our ideal customer profile, and I sought out advice from our solutions engineers, sales, product team. Like I want your knowledge, and them feeling heard builds that trust and makes them say, oh, okay, she knows what she's doing. She's taking us in the right direction.
So would you almost describe this as being like more of a collaborative leader? Because I mean, technically somebody with the leadership title could be collaborative too, but they don't have to be.
Sure. Right.
Like more of like a reciprocal relationship. Like, hey, this person does things for me. They care about what I say. And so I'm going to do things for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And that's how I hope to be, even if someday I have a title that establishes me as someone's leader or manager. I still want to have that forever dynamic of collaboration and trust and give and take. It's not a one-way relationship, right? Like
I hear you.
Learn from each other. Yeah.
I'm all about that leadership style as well.
Yeah.
So what about skipping around here to inspiring things that you've said? Maybe got time for a couple more in this time period. How about this whole concept of hard work doesn't speak for itself? So we touched on it a little bit. We've talked about asking for what we want, but what if maybe people are not as visionary as you, and they simply want to be acknowledged or appreciated or get that raise, or maybe they don't even know what they want, but they kind of reach this point where they say, I've been working really, really hard and it's gone unnoticed. What would you say about that?
Absolutely. So I will reiterate advice that I've heard from like other talks from women in tech. And so I can't take credit for this idea. And I think I've heard it twice now. So maybe other people have heard it, but I'm still going to say it because I hadn't heard it. I've started this thing called my brag document. I don't know if you've ever heard of something like this, this concept. Okay, yeah, good. I'm glad you've heard of it because it's really great. And if I get positive feedback from a teammate, from a manager, or I just released something really cool and here's why, I go and I write it in my brag document. I've taken screenshots of messages from people and just kind of blur out their identity, right? I've taken screenshots of emails and things, and I've got them in there for two reasons. One, when I'm just feeling like maybe what I'm doing isn't making a difference, I can go revisit that brag document and be like, you know what? I'm killing it. Look at all these people that have recognized that I'm killing it. Yeah, one for each side. So that's one thing. But to answer your question, secondly, this is undeniable proof. Like, we're getting into the legal world right now. This is undeniable proof that you are being successful, right? And so when you're at that year-end review and you're asked to fill out this performance review of yourself or something, we do that. We fill out one for ourselves and then our manager does one for us. You have date time stamps of on this day, I was told this. And so when I did my performance review, I was able to call back. You know what? I had two very high standing people in the company reach out to me specifically and tell me I did good job on this thing because XYZ. And now you have that proof of I am going above and beyond, right? And so having that documented paper trail of what you've done for yourself and for other people who maybe just forget, they get wrapped up in what they're doing and wrapped up in impressing their manager, and they can't go back and think about the things that you did. That is really important. And I think it can be really valuable. Do you feel like that is a good answer to that question? Do you feel like
Oh
that's
no, I
helpful?
think it's a
Okay,
fantastic
good.
answer.
Good.
But I'm going to take it a step further. So because
Please.
we talk about how things are not always an ideal world, right? So you
Yes.
mentioned like the performance review, and I totally
Yeah.
agree with you. Great chance
Yeah.
to like look at your brag document.
Yeah.
However, I know that sometimes, again, a lot of times because we're just freaking busy, and our managers are as well, maybe they do
Yeah.
not ask very often, or you do not feel like you are given the opportunity to say, hey, what have you been doing? Brag on
Yeah.
yourself. Uh,
Yeah.
do you encourage people, women, to put themselves out there? Like, it feels aggressive to be like, hey, nobody has asked me about what I'm doing, and look at how amazing I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. But I hope that we can stop looking at it that way, myself included. I'm just as
Uh-huh.
guilty of this as anyone else. Because your manager's job, no matter how well they do at it or not, is to help you be successful. That is part of their job description, right? When you go from individual contributor to manager, it is your responsibility to lift up the people that work for you and to help them reach their fullest potential because it benefits them, it benefits you, and it benefits the company. So it's not just an emotional thing. It can be a monetary financial thing too if you want it to be. So I would say if you're in a one-on-one with your manager, maybe once a month, you'd be like, hey, here's what I did and I was really proud of it. I got some really good feedback. Or maybe you schedule like a once a quarter meeting with a skip level or even like two levels above you. If you're finding it hard to gather support, maybe you reach out to another woman in the company who has been especially supportive or has been outspoken about their willingness to help others. Like put a meeting on their calendar. I've done that. I meet with people all the time that aren't my manager or my manager's manager because it helps you build those support networks and advocates in the company for you. And so
Mm.
I've heard this concept of like a mentor versus a sponsor. Have you ever heard of that
Yeah,
before? Okay,
but
yeah.
go
And
ahead and tell
so,
people. Yeah.
no, yeah, of course. Like building up these people who are willing to sponsor you, people who
Mhm.
you can tell about your achievements. And when you're not in the room, they will talk about how well you're doing. And so you don't have to schedule this quarterly meeting with the VP with the meeting description being, I want to tell you all the cool stuff I'm doing. Come listen to me. No, it's a natural, hey, I really respect what you do. I'd love to meet quarterly and talk about how your work is doing, how you think I'm doing, maybe how you're doing in your personal life, if there's that kind of vibe, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so there are so many opportunities for you to connect and champion yourself and give other people good content to champion you as well when you're not in the room.
See, this is part of why I love the content that you're putting out online because
Thank you.
uh, I could be totally wrong, but I almost get the impression that this comes very naturally to you. Like you just have such a great way of seeing things and solving these business and interpersonal challenges. And the way you phrase these and kind of connect the dots for people, I think is really, really helpful. It's going
Thank
to help a
you.
lot of people grow in their careers.
Thank you.
So I want to give you a chance to promote some of this. I'm giving you a chance to show your brag document.
Oh boy.
Where where do you live online, or do you have anything coming up that people can look forward to from you?
Yeah, so I just left a almost 3-year Instagram hiatus. I have been posting on Instagram tech content since probably like 2019 or 2020.
Uh-huh.
Started posting data learning concepts, but naturally, as I have gone down this journey of changing rules 5 million times, so has my content. So I'm back on Instagram, totallytech.io, because I'm totally into tech and I just had to do
Totally.
something that was on brand for me. Exactly. I post a lot of what Erika was talking about today have been things that I've shared, whether through
Mhm.
short content reels or even just like little photo grids to swipe through and read. And so I'm on there. I also share on LinkedIn as well. I'm just dipping my feet into the world of content creation again after a long period of burnout. So I'm
Feel
I'm I'm
that.
thinking about what's next. Maybe blogs. I like to yap, and so these short timed reels and carousels on Instagram maybe just aren't enough for me. So I might get out and write some blogs. We'll see. But
Well,
yeah,
and
I
your
love
content
sharing. Yeah.
is
Go
both
ahead,
practical and
please.
honest too. Like we have
Thank you.
a big lack of that in tech. At least maybe it's just me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm like not following the people. But I
No,
think it's
yeah.
rare to find someone who's both really honest and who can really break down practical steps to be successful. So that's another bullet I'd add to your brag doc.
I appreciate that. And I feel like it's nothing that I've ever said and like tried to tagline and trademark, but I'm really big into demystifying being successful in the tech world,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's getting better, but there's that stereotypical like bro culture. Like we've all seen Silicon Valley, and it's sad how realistic it is to real life, right? Like it doesn't have to be so hard and so inaccessible and so highbrow and all these terms and technologies and AI and optimizing business outcomes. Like I'm so not about that. And I really think that someone like me, who I excel at communicating, making people understand. I have my parents and grandparents were all teachers. I taught a semester of computer science. I love to teach. And so that is, I think, what helps me be successful in my unique traits that I bring to this industry. And so it doesn't have to be that I'm the smartest, I'm the 10x engineer. That's not the only way to be successful in this industry. And I don't want people to feel that way. I really don't. And so that is a big part of what I do, is I want people who maybe aren't the stereotype. And I don't just mean a particular gender or race, although that's true too, but just anyone that maybe feels like they don't fit that mold. You don't have to be a certain way to succeed in this industry at all.
I love it. It's much needed. I will link to all of those online platforms, maybe caption the video. Yeah, I'm so glad that you talked to us. My followers are going to be so happy to meet you and to hopefully follow you.
Likewise.
And maybe we'll talk again sometime, because if you keep posting inspiring things, it will be difficult to not ask you at least a few more questions.
I would love it. And then maybe next time we'll flip it around and I get to talk to you and interview you, because I also love what you're doing. And I love that you keep it silly and you keep it approachable and you keep it fun while also being super smart. And I just love that.
Thank you.
So I love it too. And so soon it's going to be your turn to tell me about your life story.
I'm up for the challenge. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll end this for now. Talk soon and look out for the next episode of the Unnamed Inspiring episode series. Woo. All right, bye.